Oh, yeah.
Progress. Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sydney Carter. I am the Policy Program and Special Projects Manager with NBHP, and we are excited to host our 88th Legislative Session Wrap-Up event, a Q&A panel discussion with some very distinguished members of the Texas Legislature, and we are proud to be a United Way funded partner. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves in the chat and muting yourselves until we have a question section, we would really appreciate that. And in the meantime, we will go on to the next slide. And so for our agenda today, we have a few different things coming up. We are going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Sydney Carter, and we also have Kimberly Morgan, who is our policy project assistant on the line, and she'll be our facilitator today. We also have 3 members of the Texas Legislature joining us this morning. We have Representative Jean Wu, Representative Jarvis Johnson, and Senator Carol Alvarado. And we are so thankful that y'all are here. Thank you so much for taking your time to be with us and talk about this exciting final wrap-up topic today. And after that, we will kind of go over NBHP a little bit, just in case anyone's not super familiar with us and our involvement in the session. And then we will get into the part that everyone is excited about, the Q&A topics with the members of the Ledge, and then we will close. And so I will go to the next slide. So who is NBHP? We are the network of behavioral health providers. We were created in 2004, and we're a CEO network of over 45 mental health and substance use disorder service providers across Greater Houston. We have a variety of focus areas, including workforce development, education, care coordination, etc. These are our members for this calendar year. So we have a wide array of nonprofit and for-profit entities, large and small, and we're just full of really diverse and unique members, and we're very thankful for our membership. So a little bit about our legislative involvement. My work at NBHP is primarily the policy work. So I was able to, with the help of our members, conduct 45 virtual and in-person meetings with the Ledge. I tracked over 330 bills across a variety of topics that I'll get into in a few minutes here, and testified virtually and in person, as well as dropped cards of support over 30 times, conducted 2 Advocacy 101 sessions, got to participate in some advocacy days and speak on NAMI Greater Houston's radio show, which was very exciting. And there's a link to that there on the slide, and we'll be sending out the slides so y'all will have access to that, as well as the creation of our wrap-up guide, which is a really nice in-depth document that Kimberly and I worked on together to summarize basically this slide expanded, NBHP's involvement in the session, as well as budget analysis and in-depth bill analysis, and some future opportunities we can see for the next session in the interim time. And so a little bit about our policy involvement. Like I mentioned, we have 5 different legislative priorities. And so for our first one, it has to do with funding, and our kind of funding here. We are interested in reimbursement rates and funding for prevention, early intervention, and treatment services. And, you know, we can see the stat here that 1 in 6 children have a mental illness, and 1 in 15 Texans have a substance use disorder. And we hear stats like that all the time. And so we are just always advocating at the legislature for increased funding and for additional funds for this really vulnerable population. And we know that prevention is a more cost-effective method than, treatment. And so
the communities, the social groups, the cohort that we are working with to also understand what they are comfortable with when it comes to sharing these types of things. So a lot of times, even with social media data.
Oh, sorry. I think somebody's not muted.
Neuro data.
If everybody would feel free to mute, I would really appreciate that. So I'll move on to the next slide. Our next topic has to do with the behavioral health workforce, recruitment and development. And so we are really interested in creating, cultivating a high quality behavioral health workforce that can help affect the very, very important behavioral health workforce shortage that we've seen in Texas. And there are 99% of Texas counties that are in a partial or full mental health professional shortage area. And so it's really important to invest in the future of the behavioral health workforce, including some involvement we had was advocating for the mental health loan repayment program and getting parity across that program with the existing physicians loan repayment program to encourage students to enter the field of behavioral health. And that's kind of just one way. NBHP also has a very interesting workforce development program that we can talk more about another time. Our third priority has to do with jail diversion and reentry options for people with behavioral health conditions. And so jail diversion's been a very important topic to us. We know that about 30% of inmates in the Harris County Jail at any given time are taking psychotropic medication. And jail diversion programs are, proven to be effective and are very useful at diverting folks from jail and keeping them out of this cycle of committing low-level offenses to jail, et cetera, et cetera. And so we are always advocating for this at the legislature. Our fourth item has to do with housing and recovery housing. And so this item is very important to us because housing really is the cornerstone of treatment. We know 1 in 4 people who are currently experiencing homelessness have a serious mental illness, and 1 in 5 have a substance use disorder. And housing really is the cornerstone of treatment. If folks do not have access to stable housing, they really cannot be expected to adhere to medication, to abstain from substance, everything like that. And so we're always advocating for housing options for folks in this community. Our last item has to do with expanding Medicaid. And so we're very passionate about the terminology expanding Medicaid, but we also are open to expanding healthcare coverage for vulnerable Texans. So about 17.3% of our population in our state are uninsured, and that's more than double the national average. And also the end of the COVID public health emergency will kind of leave a lot of folks without insurance as well. And we know that folks who have insurance are able to more easily access behavioral health services. And if they don't have insurance, they're more likely utilizing the emergency room and other high cost kind of systems that we could see prevented. And so now I would like to introduce formally the members of the Texas legislature that we have with us, but I will pass it over to my colleague, Kimberly.
Hi, everybody. I didn't know, Sydney, before we jump in, did anybody have any questions regarding the information that Sydney had spoke about today? If you do, please put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and ask before we get on, because I know that there was a lot of information and a lot happened during the session or didn't. Okay, well, if you have any questions, feel free to ask later. But now let's segue into our panel discussion. The first person that we have is Senator Carol Alvarado.
Like you passed the COVID.
I think there's somebody who has it muted. Are you able to mute all, Sydney?
Y'all still having a party?
Yes. Anyone who's not muted, please mute. And I'm going to go through the list and see if I can just kind of mute anybody who's not.
Awesome. Thank you, lady. Okay, so the people we have on the panel is Senator Carol Alvarado. She has proudly served as a Texas State Senator in District 6 for Harris County since 2018. Previously, she served on the Houston City Council from 2002 to 2008, as well as served in the Texas House of Representatives for District 145 for 5 terms. She holds a BA in political science and an MBA from the University of Houston. Senator Alvarado has championed legislation aimed at strengthening our state's workforce, regulating use of e-cigarettes for children, and criminal justice reform. She's an advocate for women's health and reproductive rights and has passed legislation to assist victims of sexual abuse. She currently serves on the state committees for nominations, administrative, national resources and economic development, transportation, and the Senate Special Commission, the Special Committee on Redistricting. Thank you for joining us. Okay, and so one of the next people we have here is Representative Jean Wu. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Representative Jean Wu. He has served since 2002 for the people of District 137. Prior to being elected, he served as prosecutor in the Harris County District Attorney's Office. Since being elected, Representative Wu has maintained a focus on improving the lives of Texas children and has authored numerous pieces of legislation supporting greater justice for juveniles, especially fighting for the school to prison pipeline and passing comprehensive CPS reform. In addition, has also been appointed to the Texas Access to Justice Commission and the Texas State Children's Fatality Review Team. Outside his legislative work, Representative Wu remains very active and involved in the Houston community. He grew up on the Southwest Houston neighborhood of Sharpstown, earned his bachelor's of science from Texas A&M, a master's degree from LBG School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas in Austin, and a law degree from South Texas College of Law in Houston. Representative Wu currently serves on the House of Representative Committee's Appropriations Committee and the Subcommittee on Article 2, which is responsible for funding the Health and Human Services programs, which we are all very interested in, because those are also the programs that are focused on the mental health community, and also the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And then is Representative Jarvis Johnson, who will also be joining us today. He has served in the Texas House of Representatives as a state representative for District 139 since 2016. Representative Johnson graduated from Texas Southern University with a BS in speech communication, while there making numerous contributions which were recognized when he received the TSU's President's Award. In 2005, he was elected to the Houston City Council to represent District B, making him one of the youngest council members in history. Okay, while in office, he has filed and passed legislation focused on improvements of public and higher education programs, criminal justice system, and relationship between community and law enforcement and child protective services. Representative Johnson currently serves on the Texas State House Committees of Appropriations and the subcommittees on Articles 1, 4, and 5. He is the vice chair of the Community Safety Select Committee and also vice chair of the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. Okay. So, okay. Hi, Representative Wu. Is there anybody? It is so great to meet you. I've always wanted to meet you. I've heard a lot of good things about the work that you have done. Hi, Senator Alvarado. I am so excited. This is going to be a great panel. This is wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today as well.
Sure.
And I believe I, at some point, has seen, there we go, Representative Johnson. Hello. Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to jump right into this. If you guys are ready, there you go. Hi, Representative Johnson. How are you today?
Hi, still trying to figure out this technology after 3 years. I still can't figure it out.
I know. I totally understand that. Well, I am going to start with our first question. I'm going to start with the facilitated Q&A. If any of our participants have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be moderating the chat. And then after I ask some questions, we will be asking them as well. So the first question I have is for each of you. Can you please tell everybody a little bit about your thoughts on this past legislative session as it progressed and concluded, especially in the mental health space? So if you'd like to start, Senator Alvarado.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks for having us. And it's always fun to be with two of my favorite colleagues in the House, Rep. Wu, and why are you making a face, Jean? And of course, Jarvis Johnson. Jarvis and I served on city council, so we are, be careful because we get silly together. So we're going to have some fun. Boy, oh boy, there's so much to unpack. You know, every session you think, oh, this was the worst, this was the most unexpected, but this really was. I mean, think about where we started, coming off of the heels of the a tragic shooting in Uvalde, and a lot of attention being given to mental health. A lot of us supporting my colleague Roland Gutierrez, who just did an outstanding job of being an advocate for those families and continues to be. And then fast forward to some unexpected, unprecedented things we took up, an expulsion in the House, an impeachment trial. I mean, there's just so many things that unfortunately at times dominated the session. And I think that's why you saw some issues like mental health kind of at times take a back seat. But you know, as far as the budget goes, there are some highlights that we can talk about a little later for the budget. So I also have another job as chairing the Senate Democratic Caucus, and the Senate's a very conservative body. It's more conservative than the entire state of Texas, and which makes it a very difficult place to navigate. And we were able to have some successes to make bills like HB 5 better, and then just myself having some personal wins. This session, I was able to pass 38 bills, which is a record for me this session. But what a couple of my priorities were the catalytic converter bill, which we named after Deputy Darren Almendarez. So we passed that, and then another bill that I've worked on for several sessions was making sure that we could allow any non-citizen who has served in the military for at least 2 years, honorably discharged, can now be considered to be hired as a peace officer. So we worked with law enforcement and our veterans, different groups to get this done. It was a tough lift, but we got it across the finish line. And now we're helping law enforcement. And now these folks who have served our country but are going to be going through a path for citizenship can now become police officers. So those are a few of my highlights, and I'll yield at this time.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing, especially your highlights, because those are very important. Representative Wu, would you like to go? Since you're the
I guess I'll go next. I think Jarvis is shy. Yeah, it's good that we're talking about mental health, and then you have members of the legislature on here. Sometimes it does feel like it's an insane asylum.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
Especially the people over in the Senate. I mean, anyways.
Present company excluded, though.
That's right.
That's right.
The one ray of sanity in our crazy building. So Senator Alvarado is pretty much on point with it. I mean, we do this dance every 2 years. The difference is, whereas in normal years, Republicans would put up a couple of, kind of outrageous bills and red meat bills, as we say, and we call it a day and we would get a lot of stuff done. This session, not so much. The sort of red meat bills sort of dominated pretty much every aspect of life. You couldn't get away from it. And a lot of things that should have been done simply were not done. There wasn't enough work dealing with the grid. There wasn't enough work dealing with healthcare. The one ray of sunshine was like HB 12 that extended Medicaid coverage postpartum to 1 year. But I keep telling people that's great, but that puts us on par with the rest of the nation. That it wasn't like we didn't make Texas suddenly a whole lot better. Like we were way behind and we finally just caught up, right? And we're very proud of that work, but I don't want people to go home and think like, oh, we did such amazing. Well, no, you got us up to par. You got us up to a C average. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of mental health, this is Jarvis and I, this is like the kind of the stuff that Jarvis and I work on over in the house on appropriations. And this is something that I want to be optimistic, but I have to preface everything and I have to give caveats to everything. Number one caveat is there wasn't a lot of mental health work in the past, right? So anything we do, again, we're not raising the state above what the national average and what the expected standard of care should be. We're like kind of coming up to a C average, okay? And I think what I need to preface that. So we had an insane surplus, like a historic surplus, a surplus that no government like in the United States has ever seen. And we put a lot of money into mental health care, but my frustration being on Article 2, which is the main article where that money is being spent, most of that money is for beds and bed space and operating beds. And as I complained throughout the session is, hey, bed space is sort of the end of the road care. Is that like by the time you need a state hospital bed, we failed. Like we failed every step in between that. And we're spending money in the absolute most expensive way possible. In the supplemental budget, there was a $2.3 billion item in the supplemental budget, HB 100. That was for 4 hospitals for 750 beds. You work those numbers out yourself. $2.3 billion for 750 beds. Now, those beds are badly needed, but sort of my frustration in this is like, hey, can we spend maybe like 1% of that and spend it on preventative care instead? Right? Could we have done a little better? Could we mitigate the need for that 2.3 billion if we had spent a little bit more money up front and gotten people care in a less restrictive, less expensive way, right?
That's true.
So this is what we managed to do. Like my office helped out with this. We pulled a lot of the stuff. We managed to get $50 million in as a rider to the HHSC budget to let schools have direct access to the county's mental health services and have the mental health services come provide direct care to students who are raising red flags, right? Let's stop the problem before it gets bad. We also put more money into the juvenile justice system that helps provide, we're finally going to build a dedicated mental health facility for kids who have been arrested, right, in a state. We've never had this before. We put $40 million into it. I'm hoping they build it in Harris County. But this is something that's been badly needed because what we've been doing, what we've always done is we've been locking people up in order to give them mental health care, right? And that's simply, it's bad. So there's some good things. We could have done a lot more. And I think if you asked me, I would have changed some of the priorities to focus more on the beginning and not so much on the end. But again, I can't argue with the fact that the stuff at the end is very badly needed. I was just with the one of the mental health hospitals in Texas, and they said that their waiting list is 3,000 persons long. Right, and this is for jail competency restoration. So it's bad, right? And it's going to get a little better, but not as fast as I think we would want.
Yeah, wow. Wow, no, I agree with you. Like, if we were taking care of things earlier, if we put more money in preventative care, then why would we need all these beds? Because people would be taking care of their mental health sooner, and we wouldn't need to go down the pipeline.
And not ending up in prison.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's try
All
to
right,
avoid.
I'm gonna pull a Carol and turn off my video as well. Jarvis, you have the total focus.
There you go, Representative Johnson.
Well, thank you, Gene. I appreciate that.
It's all on you. We're all staring at your pretty face.
Oh, thank you. Hey, certainly I echo a lot of the sentiments that my colleagues have already expressed, and that, my first session when I was in the House, when you've never been there before, and when everybody's saying this is the worst session we've ever had in 2017, well, if you've never been there before, you don't know what bad looks like. And so I thought it was a pretty good session in respect to bills that I got passed and things that we got done. But then 2019, 2021, and now this year, absolutely, you recognize what a bad session looks like. And while I know my colleagues have touted some successes, I just simply can't. And the reason why I can't is because I think when we start looking at the little small success that we had, I think Gene pointed it out perfectly, that we sometimes rest on our laurels, because then we go, oh, we got $20 million, and oh my God, yes, let's all celebrate. And the anxiety, the angst, and the, just the anger is not there anymore. And so it kind of tempers down, and then the governor, lieutenant governor, and his senators and representatives get away and get a free pass. And then people go and vote for them again. But then you see on the other side, the sky is falling every single day, and they rally the troops, and the troops get to the polls, and they continue to put these conservative people in that continue to talk about things that Texas don't even need. They continue to talk about, our freedom and liberty that continues to be taken away. They talk about the freedom to carry their guns and the freedom to make sure that people can live their lives as they so please and so choose. And it's simply just not true. And this is where we are today. The state has literally fallen off the rails, and the legislation that has been put forth to not help people. That's the thing that just disturbs me more than anything else, is that we literally put legislation in place to make sure that people don't get help. And then they come back and give us a little small monicum of, here's a couple of pennies and be happy about it. It's the equivalent, I hate to use this analogy, it's the equivalent of, the husband beating the crap out of his wife every single day and then comes home with a gift. And as if that's supposed to excuse all of the other things that you've already done. And I think that's where we are now. And I certainly hope that the people that are on this call, the teachers, that the mental health workers, state employees, that they understand where we are in this state, that we need people who have empathy. The problem with most legislators, most senators, obviously the governor, obviously the lieutenant governor, there's no empathy. They don't know where people come from. They don't understand what they go through every single day. They simply think that, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps with no boots. Pull yourself up, but you don't help at all. And you think it's just that simple, and it's simply not. And so I think I can sit here and point out a whole lot of things that we got done. But I think it was kind of everything that we can tout as a win really was kind of a throw-in. Like, here, we got to give somebody something. We can't just continue to spit on them and call it rain. We can't continue to kick them in the behind and don't give them something. We got to have something. I mean, $38 billion in surplus. We gave not one teacher a raise. People going into schools and shooting up churches, shooting up communities. They blame mental health. Mental health is the real problem, is what the governor said. We're going to address it, and yet you still, even though there was an increase in the funding, you haven't solved the problem. I mean, literally, we got an oil leak so bad. I mean, literally, the oil leak is really bad, and you decided to get a new paint job. Nah, it's like you missed it, man. I mean, beautiful car, now it's nice. So you got a new paint job, but you didn't really solve the problem. And so we did everything in our power to protect guns, but we did nothing to protect people. We did nothing to protect children. And the statistics out there that says, you know, I think you started by saying 1 in 6 children. I mean, when the reality is, I mean, every child has mental health issues. Every human being has mental health issues. And every single day, it gets worse and worse when you realize you don't have the help, when you can't go and seek help, when there's no resources for you because you have to stand in line for 3 hours, and then all of a sudden you get frustrated. You know, so it's things like that. To watch the governor veto the number of bills that he vetoed in the history of Texas, he vetoed the largest number of bills in the history of Texas.
Yeah.
In the history of Texas, he actually vetoed a bill of mine, which is a sickle cell registry bill.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself, what he doesn't understand, creates mental health issues, because you literally took away people's ability to get help, to understand the disease that they have every single day. And this is not a disease of behavior. This is a hereditary disease. And you said, we did enough. His excuse was, we did enough. And so we don't want to infringe upon people's privacy. When the sickle cell community said, please infringe upon my privacy, please, because I understand when I give you my sensitive information that the pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare industry and they can take my information and help me. No one from the sickle cell community said they did not want a sickle cell registry. Oh, and by the way, Governor, we have 7 other registries in the state, which is some of the largest registries in the country. And yet, did you not care to infringe upon the cancer registry's personal, very sensitive information? No, so you pick and you choose, you divide and you conquer. And I think that is what we saw all session long, using red meat, using political platforms to further their political moves. And so horrible session. And my call to you guys and the Texans are, pay attention to it. Stop with we got a whole lot of thorns and a little bitty rose. So I think we can do better. But people like you guys, I hope everyone on this call is angry and you want to call the governor and you want to vote him out because you just don't get it.
I know. We're trying to do our part. Trust us. We, at NBHP tracked over 300 bills and only 28 were passed. 27 were only signed into law. Governor Abbott vetoed one of the bills that were passed. So, at the beginning of session, there definitely seemed to be more buzz about mental health. And then as, since and moved forward, it just died down more and more and more. So it was definitely disappointing to see, and as Senator Alvarado mentioned, Uvalde, there was a lot of buzz about that. And then, gun control, and just nothing seemed to happen or move forward. And it was very disappointing. But to get back kind of on those small wins, there were a few, there were a couple small wins,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be down.
I'll take them, especially HB 12, that was huge for the community, especially for, you know, because that was something all three of you co-sponsored. So thank you very much for your for doing that. And, you know, that was a huge win for, you know, low income and minority women, especially for their mental health care after birth. I know it was a personal issue for me. It would have been very nice when I was after I'd given birth to have that 12 months as opposed to 2 months of care after after giving birth. So, you know, the very last minute in the Senate, Senator Alvarado, I'm sure you're very familiar. It happened in your chamber. There was that controversial abortion inclusionary amendment added in the Senate. And then the conference committee was convened. Can you guys describe a little bit of your office's involvement with this bill, especially at the final stages? And, you know, possible future opportunities you see in legislation in this area? Is, you know, even though it was a little, you know, I would say even just a tiny bit of Medicaid expansion. It might have not been the full that, you know, it would be nice for Texas to see. But, it would, you know, Senator Alvarado.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that, like, for example, this bill, this HB 12, this is something that Democrats have advocated for. We've filed bills. Of course, in the Senate, they weren't going to let a Democrat carry that. But Senator Colcore, she tried to clarify the intent of HB 12 and narrow the scope to natural loss of pregnancies and not pregnancies that were ended by abortion. So of course we opposed it. We questioned it. We tried to work with her to get it out. And unfortunately, you know, it left the Senate that way. So, you know, we voted no on the amendment. Of course, that came down just along party lines as always, but we're going to continue to file bills to expand Medicaid. I mean, we're now just, you know, a handful of states that has not. And, you know, at first it was because, oh, it's Obamacare or whatever. I mean, we can call it whatever you want, but the fact is that we still lead the nation in the largest number of uninsured people. And we're, as I think it was Rep. Wu that said, we're always playing catch up. We're getting to that grade C level. And so having this HB 12 certainly helped, but there's so much more to do. And people just need to remember and get angry about it come election time. We have elections around the corner next year, and these are tough issues that candidates ought to be asked. We have statewide races going on, whether it's for you know, our state here, or it's for the US Senate or other races. We need to ask those tough questions. And while, you know, we don't want to come off as if we're, you know, it's all doom and gloom. Yes, there were some wins, as we've stated a few, but I think we have to now take the fight to the polls and remind people of, you know, these little nuggets that we're getting, little victories, when it could be a lot better, a lot more wins. But if we continue to have the current leadership, we're not going to see that. And of course, you know, having the right people in the leadership is important because it determines the pace that bills move. You mentioned your percentage. I mean, there were a little over 8,000 bills filed and almost 1,250 that actually passed. So think about that ratio. And, you know, we file, you know, a lot of bills, and then you get only, you know, 20 or 30 something passed, and then you get some vetoed. And that veto power was like we've never seen before. As Jarvis said, it was the most that we've seen, but it was also used as leverage, whether it was for the property tax release or it was used for a future voucher bill. We saw that exercise of power being used more than we've seen in the past. When we did the property tax relief in the last session, we did tack on some supplemental pay for teachers, and that was offered by Senator Roland Gutierrez. And this session, we weren't able to get it done. Unfortunately, what we're told, now I don't know, my colleagues may say different, but what we're told is there just wasn't an appetite for it in the House. And my fear now is that we're going to see any increase for teacher pay that's going to be tied to vouchers. And that's going to be an extremely difficult position. But I myself remain adamantly opposed to vouchers and to weakening our public education system.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. I am with you there. Representatives, Representative Jarvis, would you like to add?
Was it about what my office did with HB 12, expanding of Medicaid? Was that the question?
Yeah, it was about, kind of that last push about regarding HB 12, what your office's involvement, thoughts, because I know there was a.
I think, the expansion part is absolutely important. I think obviously it helps. I mean, every little thing helps. And I think Representative Rose, did a yeoman's job of pulling it through the finish line. But I don't want to get caught up again. We are the minority in this body, and any bill that gets passed because they want it to pass. And so, as I said before, they allowed it to go through just because, unfortunately, my defenses are already up, and I'm already ready for next session when they then pull it back, the same way they've done every other time. And when it comes to election years, when it comes to, they give a whole lot, and then when the elections are over, there you go, it goes away. So that's why I think it's important that we have to stay very vigilant. We have to stay very focused so that it can continue. Because it just doesn't make sense why we're only a handful of states that literally are not expanding healthcare to all citizens. But the funny part is that it again is the propaganda machine that the Republicans use that literally make people think that giving somebody Medicare is socialism. Literally, giving somebody Medicare is socialism, to where they're okay with giving corporations billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, taking it away from the opportunity of providing healthcare, so that if you provide healthcare, that people can, make sure that their mental health is fine, their bodies are fine, their children are okay, so that they can go to work, so that the corporations can do better, so that we can, be self-sufficient. But, and I think that is obviously the problem. We have this propaganda machine that tells Texans and even this country that, again, do it on your own. But you're not giving us any of the tools. We talk about education, how important education is. And unfortunately, they're stripping education. We've taken the arbitrary number of $18 billion and said, oh, let's give somebody tax reform relief. When really the underlying message is let's underfund and let's take away funding from education, because they understand who that is going to impact and who it is going to hurt. And so again, good work. Don't get me wrong. We're there to do good work, but I think we've become more defensive than we can be offensive. And when you can't be offensive, when you can't push the narrative, when you can't push the agenda, then you're simply sitting back trying to keep certain things off. And it is really imperative that we use our information machine to tell the truth. And in these forums, that's what this is. But we still have, we have to get it through to Texans to make them understand. Not providing mental health to all Texans opens the door for us to, they would much prefer to jail you than fix you. It was like, oh yeah, no, let's throw them in jail. Like, you could have helped this person with their own mental health, and they would not even be here, because it's going to be even more expensive, because you want to just throw them away. And I think that is what the problem has been, is that you have legislators and you have Texas that literally will throw people away. And it's easier. It's easier. I don't have to think about it. I want to deal with the interventive measures. I don't want to deal with the preventive measures. It's what they say.
It's true.
So I've been in mental health. I used to work for MHMRA. I used to work at forensics on third floor and so I understand when you put people in these positions, you need to help, not just simply house. And that's where we are. And so we have to get on the preventive measures so that people can be okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Representative Wu, would you like to add as well?
I've lost the question. What was the question again? It's been a while.
Well, we're originally talking about, originally talking about just HB 12 and kind of your office's involvement, but it kind of expanded a little bit more into it just seems to be a lot of frustration about
so
general.
I mean, there's some more stuff about HB 12 that I'm actually kind of pissed off about. So I do a lot of work in the CPS realm because it's my day job. So the bulk of our work is appropriations, CPS, and juvenile justice. And, you know, it's taken me years to work in more funding for preventative care, early intervention, and what we call it ECI and other stuff in the CPS realm, where we try not to remove kids whenever possible and just provide services and do all these great things. And one of the things that I got into a fight with people about, and I kind of like ended up stomping off in a huff, was that Senator Kolkhorst had taken stuff in HB 12 and stuff for preventative care for CPS and other stuff and dropped it into the laps of the alternatives to abortion people, and basically are telling them to go do that stuff, right? Because there's no more abortion in Texas, so they need something else to do. So here, you know, and this, I'm going to be a little political about this, but you know, in the past, we had always asked the alternatives to abortion people, like show up, proof up your stuff. Like, show us how you spent $15 million. Then next year was, well, we gave you $30 million. Show us how you spent that. And like, oh, we can't show you anything. And so now we say, well, here's 400 million. Go for it, right? And my frustration and concern about it is that all these services that they're just not going to do it. They're just going to take the money and laugh about it. And these are like critical services for families who otherwise might have their kids taken away by CPS. And so this is, if they suck at this job, it's going to be bad for everyone, because CPS cases are extremely expensive. It causes untold amount of damage when we have to remove a child, and you know, to increase that danger simply for politics is monstrous. And basically, you know, I was going to try to change it or fix it, and you know, basically like tied it all together and said, like, either, you know, this goes with it or HB 12 doesn't pass. And so, you know, I kind of had to step away and go cool off, because you know, we understand, Democrats understand the need and the you know, the importance of passing HB 12. Right. So that's very, very inside baseball. But there's a lot of stuff like that where it's good that we did it, but I'm not really thrilled about the way we did it. And there's a lot of other stuff like that, and probably more than you guys probably want to go into right now.
Yeah, I'm sure we could have a whole separate event to talk about those things, I'm sure. But we really appreciate your insight and a little bit more in-depth understanding about some of the other things that happened regarding HB 12. But I'd like to segue, because there was a really interesting question in the chat, and I also like to expand upon it. Somebody put in the chat, you know, what can we as, you know, mental health professionals do to educate, you know, legislators? I think Senator Representative Wu, you had mentioned, you know, about preventative care and how that was important. So what can we do in the mental health community to educate?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think you've kind of already nailed it. You prefaced the question with educate. I think, you know, that is the best role that advocates can play in this arena. And basically, like my little story about this is back when I first started in 2013 was I was first sworn in, and we had people come in and talk about like trauma-informed care, TBRI, and other types of care that in my line of work in the CPS world, that's old hat. You know, trauma-informed care is 20, 30 years ago that we've, you know, everyone's been working towards it and working on it for a long time. But the response from the legislature was like, this is witchcraft, right? Like, we don't believe any of this stuff. It's all like it's all hippie bullshit. And this is all witchcraft, and we're not going to buy into it. We're not going to spend a dime on trauma-informed care. And people's reactions were very visceral. They're like angry about it. I'm like, dude, this is like settled science. Like the rest of the world that's not the legislature have been doing this and following this for decades. Like, you're really behind, but they don't. And so, right. So that stuff went nowhere. My first session. And come the following sessions, we had more and more people come in and just talk and sit down with members and say, hey, trauma-informed care is a real thing. It's not witchcraft. And you know, here's how it works. And this is these are the journals that discuss it. It's been researched. It's been quantified. You know, we know that this is good medicine. And over the last decade, I've sort of like watched membership's feelings and thoughts about this. And so for people who were at one time very anti TBRI, right? All of a sudden, over the course of like 2 or 3 sessions, they became advocates. They're like, have you heard about TBR? Have you heard about trauma-informed care? This is like the greatest thing ever. And like, do you know about this? And they're all about it. And you know, we go for someone who is like vehemently opposed to working on them until they say like, hey, I'm like the only guy who knows about this. Like, okay, sure, yeah, right. But whatever floats your boat, whatever motivation you need, go for it. And going from that to now, like, trauma-informed care is a regular part of the legislature. People talk about it. People understand it. I mean, okay, they understand it, right? You know what I mean. I mean, like, it's better than what it was before. But as good advocates, this is my ask of y'all, right? Come in, talk to our membership one by one, have very frank and natural talks. I mean, like, talk to them like you're having a drink with them, right? Instead of like, a lot of times I have like really smart people come in, they just want to give me this graduate level lecture on stuff. I'm like, that's great for me. I love that stuff. But I can see other members going like, you know, their eyes just sort of like rolling in the back of their heads, and they're like, I have no idea what you just told me, right? So go talk to members. Talk to them in the sense of, this is what this applied to your reality looks like. Like, this is what we do in the jails. This is what we do in mental hospitals. This is what we do in schools. This is how we could have prevented this. This is how we could have helped that situation, right? And those kind of like calming explanations really makes a big difference, because you can take somebody, again, who might be like completely closed to that type of mental health care. Like, so like one of the things we talked about is criminal diversions, which is real big for me because I'm dealing with that right now, right? I have clients right now who have mental health issues, intellectual disability issues, and they're stuck in jail, right? And being in jail does nothing for them. It doesn't help them at all. And so but that's a big change for people. And you have to go talk to them and explain. We're not letting all the criminals out on the street. We're talking about a very select group of people that if you put them in jail, they don't really get what's going on. And it's not helping or hurting. I mean, it's definitely not helping them. It's probably hurting them. And we're not making society better. We're not making everyone safer. We're not doing a good job. We're not being good stewards of public money. Here is an alternative. And then slowly walk through those steps of, this is what we could do differently. These are the states that have done this. These are the cities that have piloted this, and this is the results. And talk to them in very calm and very like, hey, if you implement this, this is what it would look like. And those kind of conversations really change the game, right? Because this is not abortion or guns. People aren't like dead set on their decisions. So slowly making those one-on-one changes, it will be very frustrating at first because it's like, oh, I talked to these 4 people and 3 of them still voted against this. It takes time to change people's worldviews. That's it.
If I may I add? One of the things that the question is, how can you educate? Politics is the only game, is the only way of life where you can change overnight, like literally overnight. And so I don't believe education is even in some of my colleagues' vocabulary. They don't want to be educated. You literally can give them statistic after statistic after statistic, and they're going to go to the alternative facts. We can talk about what guns do, and it's not guns, it's the people. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's, you know, it's everybody else. So I think the education has to come from them having empathy. Empathy only comes when they have understood that this falls at their doorstep. And so I don't know if you're going to educate my colleagues across the aisle versus can you go to Fox News and drop this nugget and make sure that because they're the one who's steering this. We're TPPF, the all of these other right-wing propagandized machines that are feeding our colleagues is what the problem is. It befuddles me to listen as we are literally, you know, we can give them pictures, we can give them all the evidence that they need, and it still doesn't matter because they're worried about being reelected. And when they understand that I'll get reelected whether I do good work or not, because I'm going to speak to my constituents. I'm going to speak for them. And right now, their constituents, even though they need mental health themselves, because we know the majority of them need mental health. Because when someone can say, I love my gun, you got a problem. How do you love an inanimate object and you literally hate people? That is the problem. And so we have to be able to put forth the effort. Either you're going to vote them out or you're going to get what we get. And I think this is where we are. Please, I hate being the downer of the group, but we have to be serious about changing these people out. You're not going to change these people. The governor of Texas got rid of DEI, got rid of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But to the stupidity of our governor, he is the benefactor of DEI. Dude, you were in a wheelchair. When he came up with DEI, I told my staff and they begged me not to do it, but I literally wrote a bill to get rid of all wheelchair ramps to prove a point. Like, dude, you want us to be able to pull ourselves up and get there on your own merit. And I'm being a little facetious, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, I wanted him to understand. I wanted him to have the empathy. Wheelchair ramps help those that can't help themselves. And you're literally wanting to take away people's opportunity to get help, but you are taking away. And so if I took away that wheelchair ramp and say, hey, get there on your own merit, get there on your own, man. Find a way to get up that, find a way to get in that building without a wheelchair ramp, because only 1% of the population needs wheelchair ramps. So at the end of the day, get there on your own is the message that they continue to send. So that we have to get rid of these people. We can try to educate, but we have to get rid of them. And if we get rid of them, then they understand. They're like, okay, we gotta do good work now. I'll keep going on. Sorry.
I know it's baffling. I know when I read that about DEI, I was baffled. It's one thing to not agree, but when you're denying the whole state educating in DEI, that was heartbreaking for sure. I know we're at time. It's 11 o'clock, which is sad because there are so many questions. And if I didn't know if you have a little more time to talk, I know some people have to jump off. This has been a great conversation because you guys have a wealth of information. And I know that I have learned a lot about, what you're passionate about, what's gone on in session. I just had one final question for you guys about, some of the things that, as mental health advocates, what are some of the things that, like I said, this was my final question about what we could do in the interim and going into the next session. Because, this is we're very passionate and we would like to, what can we do? What would you like to see? What are some of the challenges that you expect in the next session? So, like I said, that's kind of my final question. Please.
I think y'all should spend some time in the interim. Both of my colleagues touched on this a bit, but educating and informing. Talk about the bills that didn't make it and how their common sense approach to behavioral health, to mental wellness, and talk about the missed opportunities that you faced and the challenges, and make sure that your colleagues start within your own circle and let them know what's at stake. And then go and talk to our friends on the other side of the aisle. Don't waste your time on us. We're on your side. We've been advocating, we've been filing the bills. And I see a lot of advocacy groups do that. They come in, they're talking to the same people over and over. Go talk to people that are challenged when it comes to understanding the importance of this issue. Think about what happened in Uvalde. We thought, oh my God, this should do it. People, if this doesn't change their minds about gun violence or really getting serious about mental health, what will? And everybody started off talking about it. Yes, we've got to do something about this. And then it just sort of went away. People forget. And it wasn't because the families in Uvalde or my colleague Roland Gutierrez wasn't keeping people's feet, keeping their feet to the fire, but it's just other issues started coming up and distractions. So you have to stay on it and be consistent and not wait till session rolls around and we're in crunch time, but do it now. Talk about those things that you didn't get done and how much better off we would be if you had done them.
I think in addition to that, you have to put a face to this thing. And I think you have to make sure that my colleagues who don't or won't help, they have to understand that these are your people too. Mental health is not an issue applicable only to Harris County. It's not an issue applicable only to Black and Hispanic people. It's not an issue that only affects poor people. I think you have to get, the information campaign is important, but I think you have to put a face to it. Everything that we do in this country, everything that we do is about marketing. And I think the empathy comes when they understand it is their people who suffer. I think Senator Alvarado pointed out earlier, when people turn down healthcare because they called it Obamacare, but they're okay with the Affordable Care Act. Oh, I want Affordable Care Act. I don't want Obamacare. You stupid, what? But that's what it is. They didn't want to deal with Obamacare because it was that darn Democrat. But I'll take the Affordable Care Act because, yeah, that's for me. That's what we have to do. So I think it's important that when you go out and you market, make sure that they understand it's your children. It's your children, it's your wife, it's your brother, that face looks like them. And that problem will come to their doorstep, but you gotta break down that propagandized machine that where they're only showing certain people who need the mental health. That's the only image that they continue to put up. and that's why people on the other side of the aisle like, that problem's not ours, that's theirs. When all the while, their children are going to shoot up the schools. Their children are going to do all of the damage and the hurt that's going on. But for whatever reason, they still don't believe, you know, it was something else. It had nothing to do with my child. It had something to do with something else. So put a face to it. And I think that's going to help with the empathy. That's going to help them have a better understanding.
Thank you.
I mean, I will say, I mean, I think Jarvis like knocked it out of the park. I'll say this. When Senator John Fetterman, or Senator-elect John Fetterman, or no, he was senator then. When Senator John Fetterman said like, hey, I need to take a break and I'm having my own personal mental health issues and I need a rest, I need to recover, I need to seek some care. I was like, I mean, almost in tears, because like here you have the whole country watching somebody that a lot of people were rooting for, somebody who's supposed to be big and tough and kind of like a wild and crazy guy. And he comes out and says, I'm not always strong. I'm not always the person you see. And it's okay to need help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to admit that you're having some type of issue. Like if he had just to say, oh, I'm having some lung issues and I need to take some medicine and I need surgery, everyone go, oh yeah, no big deal, who cares? But for someone to come out and say like, look, mental health issues are just normal issues. Some people have them, some people don't, but it could be anybody you know. And I think that's to Jarvis's point. We have to stop the othering of people with mental health issues. And, you know, I have mad respect for one of my former colleagues, Garnet Coleman. Not only was he just an incredible statesman, but he made his own mental health battles a public struggle, right? And I mean, people always said, like, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you embarrass yourself like that? And I'm like, he is putting himself out there to save people's lives. Because when other people with mental health issues see that a senior state elected official comes out and says, I have mental health issues, I take medication, I get treatment and therapy, people go, oh, that's all right. So it can't just be legislators like who are educated. I would really say educators and the public should be hand in hand. We have to educate our own people, right? If you can't educate, I'm going to use this example, a hardcore right-wing Republican and who just says like mental health care is all witchcraft and it's all baloney, go talk to their community. Find people in the community who say like, look, I have mental health care issues and the state saved my life. The state's care saved my life. Or saved the life of my brother. Find them and say, would you go talk to that member, right? And would you share your story? Would you be brave? Like Garnet Coleman, would you be brave like John Fetterman and say, hey, my name is, and I have mental health issues. And I want you to know this because I don't want you to be scared of me. And I want anybody else who's watching this to know that you can get help. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a coward. It doesn't make you whatever you feel like it makes you. It's just healthcare, like anything else. And we got to start changing that narrative, changing that conversation. And that conversation happens at home. It happens in our workplaces. It happens with our friend groups. It happens with our relatives. And just like anything else in our society, if we want it to be change, if we want to see change, then we ourselves have to be the instruments of change. That's it. And I have some more time, and just out of respect for all the advocates on here, I'm happy to stay on. I know Senator Alvarado's got like some kind of trial or something to get ready for. I don't know, some of weird things in the Senate. I don't know. Oh, I mean, we're under a gag order apparently. Dan Patrick's gag. Dan Patrick's gagged me.
What? No. You can't talk? Well, I know.
Can I
Yep.
add one more thing?
Go for it.
I think it's important. One of the things that in the Black community, when it came to mental health, growing up, and obviously before my generation, is that when there was a problem, they always said, take it to God. Let's go to God with this. And, and as much as we want to believe that God can heal and God can, and we do know that those who are believers understand that, yes, that God can heal, but faith without works. And I think this is where we are. And I think over time, and I thank God, this is what's crazy about, I thank God for COVID. I know it sounds crazy, but the reason why I thank God for COVID, because mental illness became a real thing because people were at home. And then all of a sudden, everybody started realizing that little boys needed help. Because, and I used to give this story all the time, is that as a boy growing up, I could never ask for help because I was always taught in this country and in my community that you had to be tough. Don't show that. You can't cry. You can't do this. You can't do that. But when I was young and I was in the 7th grade and, Kimberly broke my heart. Not you, Kimberly. There was another Kimberly. She broke my heart. And I wanted to cry. And I went home and my uncle said, boy, you crying over a girl? And so I had to start masking from then on. So every relationship that I had where I wanted to fall in love, I was like, I'm not doing it. And so it made for unhealthy relationships. But COVID came along and all of a sudden everybody started saying, we have a problem. We have a real problem because people are at home and violence is breaking out. So because of the bad that happened, good came out of it. And that's why I get back to, it's important that we normalize mental health issues. We have to normalize it. And when you normalize that is the commercials. You normalize it with the information streams. You normalize it by talking about it constantly over and over again. But we got to get it on a mass format, not simply talking to the legislators, but on a mass format so that their constituents will say to them, you need to pass this. I don't want to pay for jail anymore. Let's pay for people's healing. Yep. I don't want to pay for this. I want to pay for that. When you normalize it, I think people will start to talk about it more and more often. We get caught up and you kind of get beat up behind guns and all of the other things that are really, really, really not they're not the problem. But I think it's important that, again, we normalize it. And I'm glad we've gotten to this point in my community where people do and are seeking more help and are talking about it more. It's amazing among my friends, 50-year-old friends that are saying they went to counseling for the first time. They went to therapy for the first time. And you go, wow, 50 years old, you've never been to therapy, 50 years old. But we don't normalize that because that makes them weak. I introduced a bill, and I will shut up. I introduced a bill about police officers and the mental health that they need. They see death and hear killings every single day. They have a mental health issue. They don't want to admit it. Why? They feel like it makes them weak. That's where we are in this country. We think needing mental health makes you weak, and that's just simply not true. Needing to talk to somebody makes you stronger. So when you guys go out, I think, again, a mass campaign and where we can help you to get it out there to everybody, I think changes the narrative and I think helps us to next session pass the type of legislation that we want passed because more and more people are talking about it and they're ready to address it as opposed to, oh, no, let's not talk about that again. Let's move on.
Yes, thank you. That is very good advice. We really appreciate it. And as much as I'd love to keep talking to you guys, talking to y'all and learning and having the session and growing, we do have to go and wrap up. So thank you so much, Senator Alvarado and Representative Johnson and Representative Wu for participating in the panel today and today's event. We really appreciate y'all taking the time to share your thoughts and your insights about session, and as well as what we as mental health advocates can do, moving forward in the interim and, moving forward. I think you guys really hit home, not just talking to legislators or, on who haven't passed these bills, but also talking to the constituents, because that is important, reaching the people. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who was listening, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Sydney, thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you again. Bye.
Thank you all so much.